It's good, y'all. We back in the building. Episode 21 of Catch and Counter. As always, I got my guy Nibs with me. We got Dakota as once again a special guest filling in with us today. The namesake of the show, he created it, so the least we could do is have him on once again. Chopping up this boxing talk. We had big card and top rank last week that we'll get to, but first of all, we got to get to this Saudi card. It was like a 10.5 hour card. I wasn't able to watch all of it. I'm not sure anyone was able to watch all of it. We watched a good amount of it though. Anthony Joshua knocks out Francis Ngannou in the second round. So Nibs, I'll go to you first. What did you think about Joshua's performance against Ngannou?
Did my guy freeze up, or is that me?
Well, he did freeze up, but I think we know what he was going to ask you.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear, bro. This is what happens when you fight one of the top 10 heavyweights in the world and you've never boxed professionally before. It would have happened the first time when he fought Fury, but Fury probably didn't take it any kind of serious, probably didn't halfway train for the fucking fight. And he won just off of his natural talents at the end of the day. He got caught by, a shot. Francis Ngannou is not a boxer. He's an MMA fighter who can punch really fucking hard. So, at the end of the day, let's face it, Anthony Joshua is still one of the top 5 heavyweights, period, in boxing, right? Like, even though he's got 3 losses, his 3 losses are in title fights against legit dudes.
Beyond losses, he has flaws, right? But because he has flaws, there's only going to be but so many people that can actually exploit them.
Exactly. Like the fact that you lost back-to-back fights to Usyk, and the second one you were much better than you were in the first one, and those were close fights. It wasn't like, he was completely blown out. And Usyk is considered by most one of, if not the best in the division. So, okay, cool. But when you're going from punching, what are those, like the gloves they got, like 3-ounce gloves or some shit?
I think they're 4 ounces, and they're fingers.
Yeah. And they're mitts, bro. They're like mitts. They're not even gloves. They're mitts. And then you put on those big boy gloves, and then you're punching guys who, guess what? All they do is get hit. MMA guys, they can wrestle around with you. They can do other shit. They can kick you if you punch them too hard. In boxing, all you have is 1 and 2. That's it. Guys come over. And I think it's disrespectful. We kind of mentioned this a little bit, in the pre-game here, but it's disrespectful to come over to one sport and think you can fight the best in the division or the best available guys, the top guys, and do well, bro. He got lucky against Fury because Fury probably didn't take it any kind of serious, and Ngannou did. Credit to him, right? You caught him cold. We get it. That does not mean that's going to happen every time. If there's a reason why, guys that are retired like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, they're not going over and fighting, Aljamain Sterling or fucking Israel Adesanya right out the gate, right? Because those are the top guys. Like, nobody's calling them out in an MMA fight. They're like, yeah, come over here because 1, we can make more money. But 2, I've never done MMA before. So why would I think I can beat any of the top guys? It's to me, it's just disrespectful. And, hopefully we can put this to bed now.
But I think the difference, right, is they view boxing as one component of what they do, right? So they don't even respect it as its own individual sport. They go, oh, striking. But it's not. It's inherently a completely different sport, right? The other side of that, too, you were talking about the gloves. When you got those bigger gloves on, you can throw harder. Your hands are not as vulnerable as when you have those 4-ounce gloves on. So that's a lot of times about placement, and you got the smaller gloves, so you're more inclined to get knockouts. But this is right at the end of the day. This was actually a horrible mismatch. It was a complete mismatch. It was a boxing novice, and you said top 10. I would argue top 3 or 4 heavyweight at the moment. Just using some really basic 1-2 straight right hand down the middle, and stopping a guy with 1 fight. It's a great win in context, but I don't think it was ultimately an even fight.
I mean, you saw Anthony Joshua didn't even really celebrate it too much at first, right? It was kind of like, well, yeah, like he expected exactly what to happen, right? So he goes back to a corner. He's like, all right, cool. Can we get this over with now?
I
And I
just want
think
to
that's
add to what Jesus M is saying real quick. I'm not even saying I think you're right that the fighters use it and use their popularity to get into paydays, but I think the MMA fan base truly believes that boxing is just a piece of what their guys do, not understanding that it's a whole different thing.
you remember when Floyd fought Conor, right? Everybody who is an MMA fan swore on a stack of Bibles that Conor was going to be able to knock out Floyd Mayweather because he gave some guys some business in the gym and sparring. Yeah, those guys weren't there to really hurt you. They were there to boost your ego. They were there to teach you some things, right? That's what their job is in sparring. It's let's face it. Plus, you were fighting Paulie Malignaggi. Stop it. Okay, come on. So, you come over here, you fight our best. He toys with you literally for 10 rounds. You never, and as big a puncher as Conor McGregor is, never ever even had Floyd buzzed at all. And then he gets stopped because, you can't go that long as an MMA guy.
But also, what a big puncher is in MMA is different than what a big puncher is in boxing, right? So, Jack, we lost you for a minute. Hop in for a second, brother. Tap in.
Yeah, no, back at it. So perfect timing. The internet decides to crash as soon as we start the show, but at least we got it going first. I knew you guys would pick up where I left off anyways, so no worries about that. But
Shit.
yeah, I mean, let's be real. I mean, Anthony Joshua did just exactly what we thought Tyson Fury was going to do back in October. So just we saw what it took when a top heavyweight is dedicated, disciplined, and is a real professional. We saw the result, just the difference in levels that there was. I do want to give Ngannou credit though, just because just the whole fu he gave to the whole UFC establishment. When he left, you weren't sure what was going to happen, and this dude's parlayed it into two huge paydays. He's made about $50 million, and he lost this fight, but I think he won the war in general. The moment he knocked down Tyson Fury in that first fight, he had already won. Just his journey and everything, and anything after that was icing on the cake. So this didn't go the way he wanted to, but he can already view this as a win. But like I said, it was just a levels fight. AJ was just sharper and he's got more boxing experience. I mean, he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a former unified heavyweight champion. And as you guys said, he used basic fundamentals. Ngannou was the first in the kickboxing stance, so he's got the wide hands, so you could tell the straight punches were going to work. Then he switched southpaw, which was really weird, and then that's what opened up the knockdown right away. And then he just the straight punches, the pull counter, and then it's a straight right hand afterwards. Just textbook, simple boxing by AJ was the difference, but you guys said it's just a level thing. These MMA guys is even Ngannou was the best guy to transfer over. You still saw against a fully motivated Anthony Joshua that the holes there are just too much to overcome. All those things he's learned in MMA, it's too hard to remove all that. And those guys are never going to be able to pick up a fly. Ngannou.
Well, we missed just the tail end, but I got the basics of what you were saying, and I think that just the punching range in MMA is different. How you set your shots up is completely different because what could potentially come back at you. So how you're setting down on your shots, they're just not expecting that level of explosivity. These are not the kind of fights we want, guys. At the end of the day, listen. Ngannou had a good fight with Fury, like you said, Nibs. It just didn't look like Fury was really having a serious go at it. And these are not the kinds of fights we want our top athletes engaging in.
I mean, let's call it what it is, bro. But let's keep it real. Fury looked at it as like what it was. It's a cash grab. It's big money for all
Still got to
parties
train
involved.
for the cash grab, though.
Yeah, but he's not thinking like most of us, right? Let's be real honest. If we're all being 1,000%, right? We all thought Fury was just gonna go in there and whitewash this dude. He's probably thinking the same shit. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, this dude's in here just to get his money, just like I am. But what he failed to realize is that Ngannou, again, to his credit, he takes combat sports serious as fuck. He was dead serious about proving to people that he can actually box. And I will give him credit. He did look a lot better than I thought he would. But again, AJ is one of the hardest hitting heavyweights, in heavyweight boxing, right now. You can't have you can train as much as you want to, but these guys train to take punches for a living, right? MMA guys, they train to get hit, but they don't train to get hit like heavyweight fighters. You know what I'm saying? Over 12 rounds. These guys. I mean, have you ever seen a heavyweight fighter's neck? This shit is ridiculous, bro. Get out of here. So I just think it was a cash grab. He caught Fury cold, and then and me and Jack have talked about this before. You got one on us. Now everybody's like, okay, this dude can really hit. You know what I mean? You can't take him light. You got to go in there and put some work on him. And this is what happens. And I think it would happen no matter who he was fighting at this point going forward, unless he starts with goes on the Jake Paul route and starts fighting cab drivers and NBA players.
Where do you guys think Joshua fits in the mix now in the heavyweight division? Because he does look rejuvenated. Obviously, this was tough to gauge because we knew Ngannou was still kind of a novice, but the Otto Wallin fight, I thought he looked very, very good too. He's starting to really put it all together with Ben Davison. Clearly, he's already lost to Usyk twice. Even a better version in the second fight wasn't enough. But if Fury does beat Usyk, do you guys give Joshua a shot against Fury? And I'll say the reason I do is because Fury's kind of so up and down. It looks like he's got himself after the mess he had against Ngannou. It looks like he's gotten himself into great shape now. He does look skinnier, thinner, and just really ready to go against a guy like Usyk. If he wins the undisputed title and beats Usyk, I think there's a chance of a letdown there. Him getting kind of partying a bit after being the undisputed champion and thinking he can kind of go in there and beat AJ similar to how he did Francis. So do you guys think that's a possibility at all, or do you even think that Joshua at his best could give Fury a test at his best at this point too?
Well, I'll be honest. The fight that I want to see, and we'll maybe talk about that next, I'm assuming, is I want to see Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker too. I think that Joseph Parker has two of the most significant wins at heavyweight right now, doing it back to back against the two biggest punchers probably at the division, Deontay Wilder and now Zhang. I don't see how he hasn't earned his way into a big fight. And with Joshua having lost to Usyk twice, I think my interest in Joshua fighting either of those guys goes up a bunch if he's able to fight this version of Joseph Parker. Appreciate you, my guy. By the way, they aren't new. I've just been needing them a little more lately, and that's father time for you, baby.
Yeah, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
Look, man, let's be real clear. First off, Anthony Joshua he's the same guy he's always been, right? He's one of the best heavyweights in the division. There just so happen to be two or three guys ahead of him, right? Their names are Fury and Usyk at this point. But it does make it interesting because a lot of people thought Zhang was on an uptick. I mean, he's winning. The way he smoked Parker. Joyce was ridiculous. Twice. I mean, killed him, and people thought Joyce was the next best thing. I ain't saying no names, Dakota, but everybody thought Joyce was this next big thing. He gets smoked by Zhang. He's got a belt now. I thought, early on against Parker, I thought Zhang was getting him out of there. It seemed like every time he touched him, dude was falling down. So I'm like, oh, this is over. To Parker's credit, and you said it beautifully, Dakota. He's earned his right to get another fight, because a lot of people, especially after getting knocked down twice against Zhang early, would have just kind of given up, right? They would have just let themselves be stopped. Parker put his big boy pants on, showed his nuts, and said, "Nah, I'm going to get in here." And he won pretty much every round he wasn't knocked down in, really. And Zhang proved that he just doesn't have the gas tank to keep going with these elite guys. I think you're right. You went. The Wilder fight was just super impressive. This was even more impressive because you got knocked down. I thought it was fucking hard, bro. That second knockdown, I was like, oh shit. Somebody start the music. You know what I mean? He gets off his ass, and his nose was busted all to hell, and then Zhang does nothing for the back end of the fight. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that Parker's earned it. I think Anthony Joshua is still the same guy, but I still think he beats Parker. Picks up another belt, albeit the interim joint, and then maybe from there he gets Fury if Fury still's around, and that's still going to be one of the biggest fights in boxing when they strap it back up.
That's for sure. And the one problem with that is even I see Jesus mentioned here is that I think there is a rematch clause, of course, in that fight, as there is for all these fights that we don't want to see rematches in. But a Zhang Parker rematch, I think, could be interesting to see. But I think at the end of the day, just I want to give Joseph Parker credit because especially that second knockdown, he caught it right on like the side of the head, the back of the head. Those are tough ones to recover from. You don't normally recover from shots like that, but he was able to recover, get back on his business, and like you said, Nibs win basically every round. He wasn't knocked down, and besides like the first two. So for me, his conditioning and his discipline was just the difference. Another guy who turned
He's
his
a real
losses into
pro. He's a real
Mhm.
pro.
Yeah, another guy who turned his losses into lessons too. I mean, he's lost to AJ, but then he lost to Joy. I mean, he lost way back when to Dillian White too, but then to AJ and then the Joyce one. I think a lot of people kind of wrote him off, but he's had 5 fights in 14 months since then, and now picked up the two best wins of his career. So I want to give him credit for that. We always talk about it ain't always about how you lose, it's about how you bounce back from that. And he's the perfect example. He lost. A lot of people
And
thought he might have been
isn't it
finished.
ironic, Jack, that it seems like the fight between him and Joyce, he's been fantastic since that fight, and I think how brutal that fight was actually the last time we saw Joe Joyce have a great performance
Hmm.
because it
Yeah, and
was a
it
brutal
also
fight.
mhm. And it also shows that you can, which we know anyways, when people try to use the triangle theory in boxing, it don't always work out. Just because this guy beats this guy doesn't mean this guy. I mean, like you
Yeah.
said, Zhang smoked Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce smoked Parker, but then Parker beat Zhang, the guy who smoked the guy who smoked him. Like that's why you can't always. That's why we love the sport of boxing, though. You never know, especially in the heavyweight division. Anything can happen. Just because this guy beats that guy, don't mean that guy then beats that guy. And that's the beauty of it at the end of the day.
And he dominated Wilder, who everybody thought would smoke everybody. So
12-0. 12-0, easy work. And that's why I say I don't want to. I know the conversations are all going to be about Anthony Joshua and Usyk and Fury, but I think that Joseph Parker has earned his way back into that conversation in a meaningful way, and I don't think you can overlook him against anyone. I
yeah,
just
I
don't.
mean to be honest with you, you know, I'll say this, man. I think that um, I don't think Anthony Joshua gasses like Zhang does. Right. I still think Parker's a better boxer, overall boxer. He's got some more tools in his belt than Joshua does. But you can say that about a lot of guys. But the one thing I will get, and I'm not the biggest Anthony Joshua fan, but one thing I can say to him is that he's made corrections. Right. They're not super big. He's done enough to where I think he gets past Parker again, and he might even stop him. I mean, let's face it, that boy hits hard as fuck. You know what I mean? And he beat him easily the first time. I think it's even easier this time. But you're right. If they've got a rematch clause, somebody needs to get Big Bang a motherfucking personal trainer because dude just cannot go like after 5 rounds. He's done. Like it's a wrap.
Yeah.
If
What
and if he had the killer instinct after both of those knockdowns to go after Joseph Parker hard, the fight's over, man.
I just think it's tough because he started late, right? But he is 40 years old, so I think physically he's sort of hit a point where I don't know how much better he's going to get physically.
Mhm.
You know, he may be able to tactically keep himself relevant, but I think he's at a point in his career where he kind of is what he is, and I think he just had a younger, faster, more athletic guy in front of him who had half
But,
decent power and made him keep his hands in his pocket.
but bro, he barely touched him with that first knock. You know what I'm saying? It was like I'm just
Yep.
gonna throw this out here, and he knocks him, and he
Yeah.
had him in some trouble. Imagine if he
I'm just
starts
saying.
putting some
I'm just
shit
saying.
together.
I don't think he knew when to throw. I think he was thrown by the hand speed and the movement, and he got to a point where, oh, I'll land one and it'll be over, and then time ran out, and Parker had outboxed him.
Yeah, I think it was the hand speed of Parker, which was a big thing. And what do you guys think it is with Zhang the way? Even it's tough to say he even gassed out today because it seemed like he just had that tempo from the beginning. And it's not like in the Hergovich fight, he kind of punched himself out a bit early. The Jerry Forrest fight, which I know he had kidney problems in that fight, but he scored a bunch of knockdowns early and kind of punched himself out a bit. In this fight, it doesn't even seem like he didn't really punch himself out. He never kind of really went for it and was still never able to. Is that just the size he is? Is that more, as you said, just the age and all those things? Because it's tough to see a guy like that who like never really got going, but also never had enough in the tank to kind of really push the action at all.
Well, we're talking about a very destructive puncher, right? And at the end of the day, Nibs, you've been telling me that for years. Joe Joyce right there to get hit. So if you're right there to get hit against one of the biggest punchers in the division, it's just you're kind of setting him up for success. Whereas Joseph Parker is not there to be hit. He's actually, I would say, pretty elusive in comparison to a lot of heavyweights today. So I think it just strategically presented a different strategy. The difference when he fought Joyce was we thought Joyce's chin was this unbreakable thing. But by the time he had gotten to Zhang, he's had all these tough fights, including the Parker fight where he did take a lot of punishment. And Joe Parker was not going to give him anything.
I mean, I just look at it like this, bro. I don't know where his breakdown was because, again, in the Hergovich fight, you saw him throw a shitload of punches, right? You saw him when he got Hergovich hurt. Huh?
In the first half.
First half, right. But here's the thing. If he does that same thing in this fight, fight's over. You know what I mean? I mean, he had Joseph Parker, like you said, legitimately hurt twice. Those weren't flash knockdowns. We're talking he was legitimately hurt twice. The thing I didn't like after the second knockdown, he starts to celebrate like he won the damn fight already. It's like, no, bro, you still have to get in here and box. This is a world-class fighter. We're not talking about some bum. Joseph Parker is not a bum. Even, in the fights he's been dominated in, the way, like, Jack said, the way he's come back will let you know who the kind of man you got to cross the ring from. He's not just going to lay down. Not talking shit about Joe Joyce, but he's not Joe Joyce. He's going to get back up and he's going to give you some problems. So I didn't like the fact that, he's celebrating. And it's like, what are you celebrating? Then you don't do anything after that. You knock this dude down, he gets back up, and you just kind of let him win the rest of the fight.
I agree with Jesus here saying you got to keep AJ busy, especially if that fight don't happen until 2025, which I think they will. He mentioned the Ajit Kabayel fight. I think there's a lot of heavyweights out there. AJ's been keeping active, so that's one thing I'm not worried about with him. See a lot of guys inactive right now, but AJ's never been the dude to be like that, so I'd assume he will get, let's say, 2 more fights in this year before he gets into that fight. But one other thing is what you guys were saying too about Parker is that I think he deserves a lot of the credit for Zhang fighting the way he did. What you had said, Dakota, too, just the hand speed and also just a subtle foot for moving either. He did just enough to kind of get out of the way, shoot his shots, and then kind of step around, little things like that. So I think that had a lot to do with Zhang not being able to pull the
Combinations too.
trigger.
It's simple, something as simple as
Yeah.
letting 3 or 4 go. A lot of heavyweights
hmm
don't do that, bro.
Yeah, because Zhang's really good, but Zhang's gonna be able to set his feet to land that big punch. So he every time Parker would throw a little something and then take a half step, he would make Zhang reset, and Zhang had to kind of reload every single time and was never able to get it off. Even in the Joyce fight, people forget that first fight. Yeah, he messed up Joe Joyce's eye, but even that last round before the fight got stopped, Joyce actually started to kind of pick it up a little bit, and you saw the little signs of Zhang maybe fading a bit. And we'll never know what would happen in that fight because he clearly busted Joe's eye up enough where the fight was stopped. But in those 2 wins, we never saw him get to the back half. So I think people kind of forgot about those stamina things and him fading late in the fight just because he hadn't had to do it the last few fights too.
And to be clear, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to do to Zhang what Joe Parker did. Even if Zhang is on the back end of his career, I just think it was a pretty special performance. And Zhang doesn't have the temperament of a volume puncher. He's just a 290-pound heavyweight, and that's not who he is. He's got fast hands, and when he sees the openings, he knows how to take them. But he may not be explosive enough to create them.
I mean, I will say this, man. I think Zhang, if he can get any amount better in his conditioning, he's a huge problem. I think he's a huge problem now. What's up? But and you have to have a killer instinct, bro. You get somebody hurt as bad as he had Joseph Parker hurt, you go in there and you finish the fucking job, right?
You
This
want to
isn't
see
bad.
more follow up. You want to see more follow
Yeah,
up. You got your man
I
hurt.
mean,
I
he
agree.
had no follow up, bro. No
Yep.
follow up. I mean, it's not like he tried to take Joseph Parker out and Joseph Parker survived. He knocked him down and then started taking pitches. The fuck you doing, bro? Get in there and whoop this man's ass. You got him hurt. He's legit hurt. Um, but I will say this: I have nothing but respect for Joseph Parker, bro. He's proven that you can never count yourself out, bro. He's showing people, hey, look, just because you get knocked down, I know it's corny as fuck. Get your ass back up. You can still win the fucking fight. Outside of those knockdowns, he won. Like I said, maybe there's one other round, two other rounds that you can throw Zhang's way if you want to. But other than those two knockdowns, Joseph Parker, hell, I actually had him winning the round. He got knocked down the second time in until he got knocked down. You know what I mean? So
Listen, and if we're talking just purely athletic achievement, right? Not money, not nothing else. There's no way he doesn't deserve the Usyk Fury winner. He just beat Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang back to back. As impressive as AJ's been, he beat Francis Ngannou and he beat Otto Wallin. The Wallin win was fantastic, but the second one was a novice boxer. Particularly if Usyk wins, I don't need to see Usyk and Joshua do it again. I think that Joseph Parker deserves that opportunity.
That's a fair point. We'll go back to Jesus' question. He's got another one down below too, but he said, "Can you score can a judge score a 9-9 round?" He said he scored round 8 9-9 because Parker was winning the majority of the round but got knocked down. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that it's a 10-point must, but in a round like that, I still scored a 10-8. But you, what is it, 10-9? You could score it. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it would be 9-9. I think 10-9 is what you'd want to do if you didn't think the knockdown was a major part of the round.
Yeah, if a guy is dominating a round and then gets dropped, I think that the protocol is 10-9 for the guy that got the knockdown. But that has to be such an extreme one-sided before the knockdown. Like if it's remotely competitive and you get the knockdown, it's 10-8.
yeah. It would have to be a thing where, like you said, he's completely whooping the other guy's ass, but gets clipped, and goes down. Then yeah, I could see it. But again, he's winning the round. He just gets dropped. And then the fucked up thing is he wins the rest of the round. Like it wasn't like, again, bro, like it boggled my mind the whole
I
time.
don't
I'm
think he
sitting
was that
there,
hurt the second
what?
one. Though. I don't think he was that hurt the second one. The first one he was fucked up and Zhang needed to go after him more. But the second one, I think he gathered himself pretty quick.
I think I think if Zhang jumps on him right after that second one, it's a wrap. Because I don't know, I wouldn't say he was as fucked up from as he was from the first one, but you could tell he was off. Like you know what I'm saying? Like his balance was off. His equilibrium was gone. So I think if you jump on him right away, you can get him out of there. Because I think if he knocks him down again, the ref probably waves it off, right? Because of that first knockdown. The first knockdown was just a wasted punch. It was like, bro, what are you doing? Jump on this guy. I mean, he busted his nose up pretty good. He's Joseph Parker was trying to survive at that point, and he let him do it, and then he just doesn't do anything the next round. I don't understand it. I don't, and he wasn't even paying attention or following his trainer's instructions. They're telling him, get this guy. They're telling him in the 12th round, you need a knockdown, to win this fight. And he goes out there and literally does nothing. I think they said he didn't even land or throw a punt. Like he did nothing. And when your corner is telling you you need a knockdown to survive this fight, and you do nothing.
Yeah, didn't land one punch. And we'll go to this one real quick and then we'll move on. Jesus said if Zhang Parker 2 doesn't happen, then who would you want to see against Zhang? And as Weedy said, yeah, he didn't land not one punch in the 12th round. I'll throw one name out there. You guys can piggyback if there's any other names you see. But a fight I would like to see Zhang in would be Zhang and Daniel Dubois. Dubois just got a big win against Big Baby Miller, and I think that's an interesting kind of another styles clash where Dubois lost to Joyce and Joyce lost to Zhang, but could Dubois beat Zhang the same way that Parker did? So I don't know if you guys had any other names off the top of the head. That was just the one I thought of, but if that rematch doesn't happen, I think Zhang and Dubois would be a pretty cool fight to have. and it would
and
fit
so
into
much
that Saudi
smaller,
kind
by
of
the
thing
way.
also. Hmm.
And much smaller, by the way. I think a
Hmm.
decent fight for Zhang at this point. I think a good fight for him. I'd like to see him in Fa Ajagba. I think
Hmm.
that that's a good matchup. I think they're in similar kind of positions where, again, he got the 2 knockdowns. He made this a relatively close fight. It's a kind of loss where you're kind of one good win away from being back in the mix. So I think Fa is in the same position. So I think that would be a fight I'd like to see.
See that too.
I think that if he doesn't get, the rematch with Parker, um, give me any of the bottom five, of the top 10 heavyweights. Give me anybody in the bottom five, and I think it's an interesting fight. I think you can make a case for any of the bottom five guys to be an interesting fight at this point, except for Deontay Wilder. I think he's gun shy. I think he's shot from what we saw the last two fights. I think he's scared of getting hit at this point. So I don't think. I think that would be the one caveat because I don't think he'd be an interesting fight for Zhang because he's so afraid of
Mhm.
that big punch. He just wouldn't engage. But anybody else in the bottom five, I'd even like to see him against Jared Anderson. See
Or
if
even the winner of Frank Sanchez and Agit Kabayel would be a
bro,
choice.
give me that. Give man,
Hmm.
because I want to see Frank in a big boy fight. You know what I mean? I'm waiting for that, bro, because I think he's special, man. That fight, there it is.
I'll
Tony
be
just said
honest too,
it.
and Frank doesn't have an easy fight coming up. That's a tough fucking fight, but I think that Frank Sanchez would make easy work out of Gile, to be honest.
I think he would too. And as soon
Easy
as we
work.
started looking at names, that was the name I looked at, and I was like, you know what, that would be another good one too. I don't know how realistic that one is, but that would be a perfect matchup to make also.
And it'd be a good. It wouldn't just be a good fight on paper. Like I think you know what I'm saying. Like people would show up for that fight, bro.
No, they would. You put it in China
Agit, by
too.
the way, Agit Kabayel is no joke. That guy's nothing to play
Mm-mm.
with. He's the guy that
No,
just knocked out
Makhmudov, yeah, the Russian guy.
Kabayel's no joke.
Big
Good.
time.
Hey, Felix, get out of here with that Ryan Garcia shit, bro. Come on, man.
Bro,
You trying to
Felix
get the quick kill?
Felix on some shit tonight.
Mm. Perfect time to kind of switch it up a little bit. So I know I didn't get to see any of the undercard fights, but I know you guys were talking a bit about it. But Ray Vargas and Nick Ball, fighter I was really interested in. I've always been pretty high on Ray Vargas. I thought he's been one of the most underrated guys in boxing for a long time now. I just didn't know how. I thought at his best he'd probably be able to beat Nick Ball. You just didn't know he's been inactive a little bit. Ball is coming off that impressive win over Dog Bay, and Ray Vargas' last fight was over a year ago, and it was also at 130 against Oshaki Foster. So he was then moving back down in weight. An older guy moving back down in weight who's been inactive. You're never going to be sure how it plays out. You guys can get into more detail, but it seems like Ray Vargas started quick and looked sharp early, but then Nick Ball kind of turned it on, got a few knockdowns late, and it became a draw. So Nibs, you watched the fight, so what were your thoughts just on how that fight unfolded between Ray Vargas and Nick Ball? So it seems like it was a pretty entertaining one with some suspect knockdowns. So give us your take on it.
Suspect, yeah. Look, Ray, Nick Ball looked like a fucking midget in there against Ray Vargas. To start off with. I mean, the size, advantage was huge. But I'll give Nick Ball this, right? He never stopped coming forward. He even though he had the size disadvantage, he kept coming forward. The second knockdown was way more legit. That was a real legit knockdown. The first one, I don't understand that one. Like he's literally throwing the guy, and as the guy is falling to the ground from being thrown, you land a punch and they count a knockdown. I didn't get that. I was like, wait a minute, that's dirty boxing. But they gave it to him. It is what it is. If he doesn't get that knockdown, he loses the fight though. Like if they didn't count that throw punch thing as a knockdown, he loses the fight. I think Ray Vargas was on his shit for the most part. He was sticking to the outside. He was picking them apart, and as much of you could tell, it was a pro ball crowd. He wasn't really landing much, bro. Like he was rushing in. He was throwing punches. They were being slipped. They were being blocked, and he got lucky a couple of times. That's what ended up happening at the end of the day. He just But I think if they run it back, I think Vargas picks him apart from the outside, and it's an easy dub.
So I thought the first 6 rounds he looked like the HBO Ray Vargas, the guy that I thought would be like one of the dominant guys of the lower weights in this era. And he hasn't quite been that just because he hasn't been active, but he has been a long reigning solid champion for years now. I thought the second half of the fight, Ball's physicality really started to bother him in a way that we've never really seen him bothered. Even in the shock fight, he just lost that fight tactically. We've never seen Ray Vargas really hurt physically or get affected physically in a fight. And I thought that there were times where his legs looked a little funky. I thought there was a lot of, I mean, Ball was fighting kind of a dirty fight, but there was a lot of going down on a knee and there was some tripping, and he just looked a little flimsier than I feel like we've seen him look before. A lot of that is credit to Nick Ball's pressure because he was tenacious in this one. But I think Ray Vargas is a guy that should move up in weight. I know he's got a world title, but it just seems like at this age, at this point in his career, I think his punch resistance looked a little sketchy.
You're being very generous talking about it was a little dirty. There was a lot of dirty, bro.
He was fighting a little dirty, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he was hella dirty, especially like when he early on he was frustrated as shit because Vargas wasn't going along with the program, right? Like, you know, he was boxing the shit out of him. And I think he threw him once earlier in the fight, if I'm not mistaken. He like judo threw his ass on the ground, like
straight up.
And there was no warning for that. There was no nothing. It was just like, okay, you know, go back and do it again. Anybody else gets a hard warning for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that kind of blatant throw. So I think Ball got away with a lot because I think the expectation was that he was going to win. But, you know, I'm with you. I think Vargas should move up. But I think that if they run it back, I think Vargas beats him. I mean, he's coming off a year and some change, you know, and he still pulled out a draw. I think if he comes back, they run it right back. Yeah, he cruises.
And by the way, I thought the draw was a fair decision.
Okay. Yeah. Seems like a lot of people did. Yeah. The one problem I have with style-wise, I would assume that Vargas would do good in a rematch too. The one problem for me is that if the weight was an issue for this fight, it's only going to get worse the older he gets. It looks like with his frame, he might have to move up in weight. That's the one thing I worry about. Now, I do know that Brandon Figueroa is the interim champ for the WBC, which it's weird that he didn't get this fight. So he's been the interim champ for over a year, which you got to love in boxing how those things happen. But hopefully Brandon Figueroa gets his shot next. I know our guy Jesus Sam, not a Ray Vargas fan, as we can see here, but it would be interesting to see if he goes up to 130. This guy, another guy who's been inactive, but if like let's say a Gary Russell Jr. comes back for a fight, those two guys fighting at 130 is a fight I'd be interested in. I'm not sure where Ray Vargas fits in with the champions at 130. We already saw him against O'Shaquie Foster in a title at 130, but I think that he's someone who could definitely be in the mix and would be a name opponent for a lot of guys up there for sure.
I mean, he's a challenge for anybody, I would say, below lightweight. And I think that, I don't know if it's the point that he's at in his career, but I just can't imagine when you're pushing 6 foot, getting below 130 pounds for over a decade. Like, I got to imagine that it's time.
It's past time. It's past time, bro. And is Gary even fighting anymore, or is he just training his brothers? Like, I don't even know if he's fighting anymore.
He's just training. There's always been the rumors of that he might come back. There's rumors he might fight this year, but I just want to see his brother Gary Antoine back in the ring too. I want to see some version of the Russell family back in the ring because they are our special talents. So I was just throwing it out there as a fight of two guys who have moving up, who have kind of probably passed their best, but would match up well against each other. I'm not sure how realistic it is though, to be honest.
I have to say this about the British contingent on the commentary on this fight. You guys have to stop being so blatantly obvious about your bias. Like it's really getting unbearable to fucking watch because it's like anytime when they leave a UK setting, they take a level of nationalism into a boxing match that no other country does. Mm-hmm. And when you're doing commentary, when you're a ref, when you're a promoter, when you're a judge, you have to be unbiased. And they have gotten so bad about that shit. And I love British boxing, bro.
Mhm.
But goddamn, they're making it fucking hard.
Is that my boy
bro.
Darren Barker you're talking about in there? Because I do
And
like
I
Darren
love
Barker a
Darren
lot. Yeah.
Barker, bro. I
No, I
love it.
agree. Mm-hmm.
But all these guys are picking favorites. They're saying
Yeah.
the sports minister from Saudi Arabia is calling AJ to say he's rooting for him.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be doing this shit, guys. These are the
Yeah.
people that run the sport. We can't pick favorites like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because I do
Well,
like Darren
well,
Barker a lot, but some of those guys can't separate being a fan. Like, obviously, he might have relationship with some guys, but when you get into the mic kind of setting, that's when those things are supposed to leave. Just leave your train of
Jack,
thought.
me and you are commentating a fight, right? There's a guy
Hmm.
from Mexico and there's a guy from the Northeast where we're from.
Hmm.
How are we calling that fight? Are we only calling it for the guy that's from our neck of the
No,
woods,
yeah.
or are we calling the fight?
Mm. Yeah, even if we know the guy, and even at that point, I think I'd probably be harder on the guy we know just to make sure you're
Right.
not inflicting that kind of bias. That's how we talk about. That's how I like to score fights. If it's a close fight, I mean a close round, and the guy I know is fighting, I give it to the other guy just to cover myself at the end of the day. But clearly, especially with our friends over the pond, they don't seem to think that same way.
bro,
But I am a big fan of Darren Barker.
we had Nova on the show,
Hmm.
but we both agree that he lost that fight, right? Like
Hmm.
we're not picking him. After watching the fight, it's like we're not giving you the homer because you've been here. We're telling you like it is. These cats, you're right, bro. That the ball fight, I was like, Jesus Christ, do they even know there's another guy in the ring? Hey, what is going
They
on?
can't help it but call it from their guy's perspective about what he's
Hmm.
doing well, what
Yeah.
he's not doing
Hmm.
well. And they're no longer calling the fight. And it's just like, I'm not interested in that kind of commentary anymore. When I'm watching the fight, I want to watch somebody commentate the fight. And I feel like that's so rare now because these guys are just bringing all of their biases, and
Hmm.
especially in England and in the UK and in that section of Europe where there's like that soccer culture, that it's
Hmm.
like unbearable to listen to right now.
That's a fact. The way you put it was good too, because I haven't seen the fight yet. I would do want to see the fight, especially to see the way it played out. But that perspective you brought is perfect, where they're always looking at it as for the British guy, he should be doing this, he should be doing that. What does he have to do to win? Even if the guy's losing the fight, like I didn't see the fight, but they're probably like Nick Ball should do this or should do that instead of saying, oh, Ray Vargas is doing this, he's doing this. This is like so. I didn't even see the fight, but I can kind of paint the picture as of how it was probably going on the commentary side too.
It's crazy. It had to
Hmm.
be said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
it's
fact.
hot garbage. It's hot garbage, you know.
Hmm.
And but it's like that every time there's a DAZN fight. I don't think it's even just it's atrocious when it's the UK guys. I'm with you. That shit is comical. But I feel it every time I watch the DAZN, no matter who's on there. I'm like, yo, man, can y'all at least try to hide the fact that and ESPN has gotten that way too, right? Like ESPN
Hmm.
does the same thing. I think ESPN and the zone, it's like they're not even trying anymore to hide the fact that they're all one on one guy's side, and it's getting bad, bro. I mean, this is what we get for letting Showtime and HBO get out of there.
Well, and another perfect example of this, and again, we're talking about this is not like a personal thing. These are guys that I'm huge fans of, but Tim Bradley called the first 8 rounds of that Kolmatov Ford fight like Ray Ford was dominating the fight. Everyone had it 5-3 Kolmatov.
Hmm.
And it's like, I get that you like this one guy, but right now you're calling the fight. You're
Hmm.
supposed to be helping to walk the fans of all knowledge levels through what they're seeing. And a lot of times we aren't getting that in commentary. There's some guys at the zone that are on the smaller cards.
Yeah,
Corey, the guy that works with Gabe Rosado, he's fantastic. There's a couple of other guys that do the Queensberry cards that are great. There's a lot of great commentary, but on these big cards, it just feels like we get a level of bias that is
Hmm.
is difficult if you know what you're watching.
Not even a UK one. I
Thankfully,
remember one
Ford
that.
took the scorecards out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Tied into it, the same one like that though. Just one that aggravated me from last year was it wasn't a UK show, but it was a DAZN show when Oshaki Foster fought Rocky Hernandez, and it was like Oshaki Foster got no credit at all the whole fight, even like basically until he got the stoppage. So he took it out of their hands, and we saw how the scorecards would have played out in that fight. But that was one that aggravated me for sure. Back when I had watched it. But let's throw this out there. One before we move on. This is a fight for Francis Ngannou. Now, a lot of people are probably going to tell me to get the hell out of here, but he needs a rebound fight. Well, I don't know if it's a rebound fight. There's another guy I know who needs a rebound fight. Was there any sellability to the fight of Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou at all? Or do you think that Ngannou at this point is going to have to fight a lower level guy? Or do you think, because to me, if they're going to make one more fight, that seems like a fight that you could probably sell at this point.
There will be a wealth of MMA fans and boxing fans who are more so interested in like character driven boxing that will be interested in that for sure.
Mhm.
I don't give two shits,
Yeah.
but that there will be a market for it.
And now, Nibs, before you go, I know what the end result of that fight is. I know Deontay Wilder's legs don't look the same. I know he waited to pull the trigger a bit, but I know he would land that right hand. But to selling to the casual audience, them seeing, okay, Wilder just lost. He lost pretty bad. Ngannou lost, but Ngannou, look at Wilder's little skinny legs. Can Ngannou really muscle him up? Is there anything that they could do? Not for us, maybe, but is that
Mhm.
the fight that they could sell at all, you think, to the casual fans?
Of course, they can sell it. It's going to sell. It make you could sell that fight out tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like because the sheep are gonna flock to it. Let's call it what it is. But if he got knocked out cold by Anthony Joshua's straight right hand,
Hmm.
what do you think a straight right hand from Deontay Wilder is going to do? It's going to render him retarded. And I don't know I don't know if that's we can't use that word no more or whatever.
Hmm.
But I'm here to tell you, if you get laid out like that against Anthony Joshua, and not again, he's one of the harder punchers. But if you get caught like that against Deontay Wilder, think Dominic Brazil, right?
Mhm.
It's look, stop the fight, take that man to the emergency room immediately, and never let him put on gloves again.
I think it was the Fury fight is a sort of weird isolated example. I think that this fight kind of showed that he doesn't really belong at this level of heavyweight boxing in general. And I think if he wants to continue his boxing career like in a safe manner, he should sort of start over.
Here's the thing. I think if Francis had started in boxing as opposed to MMA, he'd probably be one of the top guys, right? Because you can see it. He's
He
got
looked
some
more
skill.
natural than any MMA convert,
Right.
I would say.
If he started to go the, you know what? There you go. There's a fight. Him and Jake Paul.
All right, I ain't mad at it, bro.
Hmm.
I'm just saying because if he should go the Jake Paul route, right? He should start fighting guys that are on his level, and then maybe he can get back up there. But let's face it, if he keeps doing this, if he keeps fighting the top guys, this is going to be the same result, bro. Could you imagine him against Big Bang? Like, come on, bro. Come on. But yeah, I mean, there you go. You want to sell tickets? You want to put butts in the seats? You want to make a shitload of money? Put him up against Jake Paul. I mean, Jake Paul's fighting Mike Tyson. Why the fuck not?
And I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole, so we'll switch things up now. Jesus
Good
got a
call.
question for me. Ford versus Sultan Zarbek, who wins? Is that? I think I know that name. Is he a guy from Kazakhstan? Jesus Sam. I don't think he's fought enough high level opposition for me to gauge how that fight goes. I don't know if Dakota, if you know that name at all. I'm not really familiar with him. I think he's from Kazakhstan, a southpaw. I don't know much about him. I think he's fought on maybe some like UK more club level shows. Jesus can kind of drop that in the chat. Don't know as much about him. I know he's promising guy. I think Ray Ford has the experience. Okay, yeah, from Kazakhstan. All right, so I got that right. I don't know as much more about him, but I'd have to do more tape on him or see him at kind of against a fringe contender before I could look into that. But go switching over, somebody who turned himself into a contender last Saturday night. I want to give this dude Troy Isley all the credit in the world. He's been fighting tough opposition out the gate. He fought a guy, Vladimir Hernandez, who's already beaten a lot of top guys. He had a fight that he edged it in a close fight, rightfully so edged it. I don't think there was any controversy. Close fight, you could have seen a draw, but nobody is upset with him winning that fight. But man, he fought Marcos Hernandez, and he really, really kind of just turned the page for his career. He didn't force the knockout. He let the knockout come to him. he really put everything together too. So Dakota, I'll go to you first on this one because I know you've had Troy on your program and stuff like that. But what did you see and what did you like from Troy Isley? Because for me, I thought we saw the full evolution of a guy who's now ready to get the big fights at 160 by the end of this year, probably.
I just thought his offense looked so fluid. He looked really loose and relaxed. He throws great combinations that are unpredictable. He's athletic. He may not have 10 out of 10 on the power, but he's got just about everything else. And I think he's got like B plus power that listen, middleweight, we talk about there's not that many exciting fights and whatever, but there's a batch of exciting middleweights right now that if we can just get them in the ring with each other, I think middleweight kind of has a renaissance. And I think that Troy is going to be a part of a new era. As far as who I would match him with, like who I would like to see personally, I would like to see Troy Isley and Joshon James. I think that's an incredible fight. I know both guys. I think they're both real fighters. And I think they're two of the best young middleweights out right now. I don't know if they'll do that immediately, but I think both of them would take it if it was on the table.
Nibs, what do you think about our guy Troy the Transformer Isley as he turns from prospect to contender now?
I think he's a fight away from being ready. I don't say, you know me, I don't say that shit like, you know what I mean. If you know, if I could be impressed with somebody and still think they need more time, I think he's legit one fight away. I think he can fight a contender and then be in the conversation for a title fight by the end of this year, early next year. And I'm not saying that like, and I think he's got a good, against the crop of guys that are out there right now, I think he's got a good shot.
Yeah.
That's
And
just me. I could be wrong, but that's my personal opinion.
When you look
Oh,
at how he built himself early in his career, taking guys like Victor Tony that were almost impossible to hit and having to keep your composure, then you're in with a guy like Vladimir Hernandez, who's been in with the best in the division and is a rugged guy who's not going anywhere. It just gives you a set of experiences that by the time you get to this fight, you know, you're with Marcos Hernandez, you're more prepared than the average prospect.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys, he's kind of flown under the radar because he hasn't had some of the exciting performances some of the other young guys have had. But that's also because he's being matched tougher than all those guys. Yeah, if you want to give Troy Isley a fight early on the undercard, yeah, he would smoke a bunch of guys and he'd probably have more hype on his name, but he wouldn't be in the spot he is right now, knocking on the door, probably in the top 10 at middleweight now and ready for a big fight. Jesus M said Vidal against Troy Isley. I'll throw one out there too. I know this guy just had a first round knockout this
Great choice.
or yesterday against Steve Rolls. I think Stephen Butler and Troy Isley would be an interesting fight. I know Butler can punch really good, but I'd want to see. I think I like Troy's chances in that fight, but I think that's a perfect developmental fight. They're both on the same timeline. We've seen Butler be on ESPN, ESPN Plus card. So if I were matchmaking next Jesus, I think I'd match Troy Isley with Stephen Butler, and I think that's a realistic one that we maybe could see too.
I like that matchup, especially just the momentum of the moment kind of makes sense. That's a huge win for Butler, particularly with, you know, how Rolls has given Edgar Berlanga and Emma Williams such a hard time. And the way that Butler was really dominated by Janibek, that's a fantastic win for him.
Yeah, that's the thing with Stephen Butler is the dude's always been able to hit hard. Yeah, against the highest levels, against a guy like Janibek, the level show, but I mean that dude can crack. So I think Troy Isley's got the skills to be able to deal with that. But I think that's what Nibs is saying, basically being right there. That might be the last check on the checklist to say, okay, this guy has truly, truly arrived. And I think he's already basically there now. But if there's anyone who's any still doubting or anything like that, I think being in against a puncher like that, who's at least fought for a world title before, would answer any last questions anyone's got about him.
I think the last thing I'll say about Troy is I would also love to see him in with my guy Ian Green, another very talented middleweight who is in the top 10 of the WBA right now. So I know that he's somebody who's looking for world titles, as he should. But I think that would be a very meaningful fight in the division.
I mean, look, I know Troy's only got, 12, 13 fights, you know what I mean? So he's not super experienced. But you have to look at the level of competition he's fighting, right? Like, you know, you get a lot of these guys that get, 16, 17, 20 some odd fights, and they've been fighting cab drivers this whole time. This dude's fighting legit guys, you know what I mean? He's not fighting top-rated contenders just yet, but I think he's ready to do it. I think he's ready to get in there, prove himself. Maybe 2 or 3 fights. You know what I mean? If we're being realistic, right? But 2 or 3 fights from now, you could be saying Troy Isley, in the new. Like I think that's where he's at in the point of his career. And there are a lot of guys that are in the same situation he's in that can't say that. You know what I mean? So that's impressive. He's not just a guy who's got a one trick. He's got all the tools that I think will make him a world champion.
The bottom line is Troy Isley needs some respect on his name. He's one of those guys who doesn't get enough credit. And he's also one of those guys that you got to respect too, because we talk about some of these guys overblowing the social media part, which they all need to use the game, but how it's gotten really out of hand with guys like Ryan Garcia and stuff recently. But Troy Isley, one of those guys, old school guy. He just does his thing. He goes to the gym. He might not be posting all the time about it, but he's in there working on the gym, working on his craft, in there with Bomac and them now. It seems like a good pairing. The dude just gets it done. He's a workman like kind of guy, and those are the kind of guys that are gonna get everything out of their ability. Then we see here Jesus Sem saying, I didn't really know much about I think it's Ulysses Iglesias. I don't know if you guys saw, but he had a first round knockout against Marcelo Coceres yesterday, which is pretty impressive. I didn't see it, but
It was
that seems
impressive.
like a pretty
No,
impressive performance. So
it was
Coceres is a tough guy. We
scary.
saw it took him rounds against Pacheco. We've seen him in with Billy Joe, Berlanger, and other guys. So this would be another cool fight. Hamzat Shiraz, because I know he just beat Liam Williams. So him against Troy Isley would be an interesting one too.
Love that fight. Love that
hmm
fight.
Yeah. So we got two more things to touch on, just the co-main event and the main event. But the co-main event, we've talked about this guy before. I wrote an article on him last year, I think right after he won his world title. But this dude needs to be a star. I know, Dakota, you and Luke, you were talking about him, but Luis Alberto Lopez. I mean, talk about a guy who wasn't supposed to be where he is. The kind of guy he's been on the B side like 6 or 7 different times now. He's won all those fights. Another guy took 2 early L's. He took those losses, turned them into lessons, and he's came back better than ever. And I mean, I know Abe was highly ranked in the IBF, but we weren't sure level of competition, how he was going to match up against Venado. But I mean, Venado was just too much from him from the opening bell. So what did you guys think about Luis Alberto Lopez, and what does he need to do to become? Because I think he's the kind of guy that should be a Mexican superstar right now. Is it just a big name matchup or just more eyeballs on him? Because he seems like the kind of guy, if you're a Mexican boxing fan or even a boxing fan in general, you can't tell me you don't have fun and enjoy watching Luis Alberto Lopez fight. So I don't know what else he needs to do, but what did you guys think about him? And also, what's the next step in him becoming a star? Because I think that's something that's the guy that boxing should get behind.
I mean, I
He's
love watching. Nibs, go ahead. Sorry.
Nah, I'm just saying he's just got to. It's money. I was gonna try to say something really nice and poetic, but it is what it is. He doesn't have the same kind of money behind him that some of these other guys have, and he deserves everything you just said. Right? He deserves to get in there and beat a guy with a name. I think that's the part that scares those other guys. Right? Is that he's not just an opponent. He's not just a guy with a good record that you can just go in there and get an easy win against. Guys look at him and go, wow, I could possibly lose to this dude. Let's take this other guy. You know what I mean? So I think that's what's going to get in his way. It's fucked up, but as is a lot of things in the boxing game.
I also think his style, there because he has some unorthodox things he does. So there's a lot of people I think, oh, this guy will figure him out. Oh, this guy will figure him out. And as it turns out, they're not figuring him out. And it's because he is actually kind of difficult to hit, right? Unless you're punching with him while he's got his chin up in the air. He keeps his head moving. He has good footwork. He's really awkward. And stylistically, like Navarrete, he's just a handful. And I think you can point out his flaws all you want, but until we watch somebody capitalize on them consistently during this title run, to me, he's the most exciting guy at the weight. And I think that ultimately what will kind of take him to the next level, you'd think he'd already be there by now, but I think he'll have to unify. He'll have to become the guy at a weight class. Muted, brother, muted.
There we go. Jesus brought some good comments. I think our guy Shushu Carrington is somebody who can exploit some of those things. But I want to touch on this too because yeah, I can see what he's saying because when you watch Luis Alberto Lopez from on TV or people who see him live, it's probably a bit easier to see it live, but on TV it almost does look like, oh, he looks very beatable on there. And I see what he said. He hasn't fought guys with great technique and boxers. I would favor
Yeah, but
Bruce in that
how,
fight, but I do
who else is
think,
throwing left hooks from halfway across the ring?
yeah, and
He's
that's
the
the
only
thing.
guy
That's what
that does that.
that's what I was gonna say is that he's unorthodox and he does things you aren't supposed to do, which helps him up. But also, it's hard to train. It's hard to get sparring to replicate a guy like that because guys aren't taught to box like that. And he's able to, with the way he sets up his offense is his defense also, and it kind of is able to hide any of the holes that we do see in his game that Jesus was talking about. He does a weird way, like you said, Dakota. Like he leaps in with his hooks and stuff, but he does it at a way that he's able to either smother himself or then he's able to create enough distance. He does just enough with his offense to also be his defense, which makes him hard to hit and is able to mask some of those flaws that he has. And that's something that him and Navarrete have both been able to do. Because, on TV, you think, oh, yeah, you'd be able to hit this guy here and do this to him, do that to him. But once you get in the ring with him, I think it's a lot harder to do that. And he's kind of specialized, just kind of just that style that he has, that unorthodox style. And that's what makes him so hard to beat.
And listen, if it was easy to do, Mike Conlon would have figured it out. Josh Warrington might have figured it out.
Joe Gonzalez.
Gabe Flores might have figured it out. There's a ton of really good fighters that might have figured it out. And I think that if it's so easy to catch him on the way in, somebody should do it. And I think Bruce might be a guy that could do it. But again, I don't think Bruce is used to the kinds of things that Venado is going to bring to him. He's not used to somebody doing that level of unorthodox shit that hits that hard, that gets in your chest and is throwing punches you're not expecting. So I think that he'll bring challenges that Shushu's never had to deal with.
Yeah, one point before I pass it back to Nibs, but one thing about that is, which I think would help Bruce out, is that him and Lopez have been sparring partners, I think, the past 2 years a bit. So I think some of that awkwardness that he has would actually help someone like Shushu in that situation because, one, like Jesus was saying, I think he is shorter and crisper with his punches, but also being in the ring with him sparring, like with Jermaine Ortiz when he fought Lomachenko. He had already sparred with Lomachenko, so all that footwork and those things that normally mess other guys up, he was able to deal with that a lot easier. It's still hard. I mean, not that Shushu's going to have an easy time per se. I do think he wins that fight, but being and having those sparring and those rounds of experience against an awkward guy like that, I think would suit him very well on fight night, depending on how many rounds they've done.
So who are our titleists at featherweight now? We got Ray Vargas, we got Venado, we got who are the other two titleists at the moment?
Well, Ray Ford is the other one who we're going to talk about in a second, and then the last one is I forget who the last one is. I normally know that. Let me look up here. I should be able to find it in a few seconds.
Oh, it's Espinoza. It's Espinoza, the guy that beat Robesis.
Yes, of course.
There's
Yeah.
Four quality champions. Two of them are freakishly tall for the weight class, but I think this is a weight class that in search of a guy, and I think it's time that those four guys kind of start mixing it up.
I'll say this, bro. You guys, all the things you guys just said, right? It's been 13 fights in 5 years since the dude lost, and it was a decision. It wasn't like he was stopped. His other decision was a split. Like, it's not like anyone's come in there and shut this dude down or just, spanked him, right? And like you said, if it were easy, if everybody could do it, guess what? He'd have a lot more L's. And he's not fighting cab drivers. He's fighting world-class guys. Even the guys he's fought with, some shittier records have all been, tough dudes. It's not like, again, he's in there just fighting randos. So I think that, and everybody else knows that, right? So, and let's face it, you're not going to make a big, large amount of money fighting this dude. And everybody wants that nowadays. So, and he's a legit threat. So I think until he can get in there and actually get a fight, or somebody forces him to get his fight, I think he's kind of on the outside looking in, bro, which is sad because I think you're right. I think he can unify, and I think he can unify right now.
I think even a fight that he could get, which maybe would build his super side, which it's a tough ass to win a fight like this. But if a guy like Inoue does move up, obviously he's with Top Rank and he's a champion right now, so he would be one of those guys in line for that fight. And yeah, Jesus, I forget what camp it was, a good amount recently. I think it was maybe summertime But those two, I think at least one camp together, maybe two camps. So they've gotten a decent amount of rounds in, I believe. I forget what interview Bruce said that in, or a special on ESPN, something like that. But those two do have experience with each other.
Yeah, Shushu's different. Shushu's special.
Hmm.
You know, I take him pretty much in anybody he's fighting. And in a way, look, stop it. Let's
Hmm.
there's no discussion. Anyway,
But
anyway fights anybody. I'm picking anyway.
Hmm.
and
Hey,
speaking of,
I'm just saying it's a good chance for the dude to get a little bit of money and build up his stardom. We're talking about him being a Mexican superstar. I'm not saying pound for pound number one in the world or anything like that, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get the
yeah.
point.
That was cute, Jack. Go ahead, go ahead.
I have seen online uh, that there's been some back and forth between Venado and Stephen Fulton, which I think would be a
Mm,
very interesting fight and
okay.
might be a potential style that if there's anybody that would be able to time what Venado does, I think it would be Fulton.
That'd be an
I
interesting
think
one
Fulton
too. I
needs
agree with
another
that.
fight before he gets in with a guy like Lopez, considering the ass whooping he got from anyway. I'd like to see him get in and get a confidence builder back. And I'm usually against that, but in this case, I think he needs that, bro. It's just me.
Yeah. I will say I wouldn't don't sleep on Stephen Fulton. I know we're not here, but tough loss against Inoue, but that's against Inoue. I mean, if Schoolboy Steph's gonna move up and weight, and I see him being definitely a world champion again in the future at 126 and even maybe 130. We got an exclusive right here from King Felix G. I know he's up in the Ramos Boxing Academy. He said Jesus Ramos back in this May on Amazon. There's an
Love that.
exclusive for y'all. I don't know if he can give any other information out. I would assume he can correct me if I'm wrong. I would assume that's on the Canelo Munguia card, which seems like it's going to be May 4th. Obviously, he might know more. I don't know what else he can say about that, but we got news for that right there. But let's move on to our last topic because bro, was a star born last Saturday night. Raymond Ford against Otabek Klomatov. A hell of a fight because I want to give Klomatov all the credit in the world too. But Ray Ford did what he had to do to win. He switched up his style. He's normally a boxer, but he was up on the front foot. He realized midway through the fight that that was what was going to get him the win. And he showed the dog that you want to see in these guys. He was able to kind of bite down on his mouthpiece and did exactly what he had to do to win a world title. That fight is exactly what boxing's all about. The way the fight was stopped with just a handful of seconds left. It's almost like you can't write a better script of a fight like that. So, Nibs, I go to you first. What did you think about? And we got some comments on the stoppage too. I thought the stoppage, I was cool with it because anytime you kind of turn your back like that, and I just thought that
Mhm.
Klomatov's legs were completely out of it. But I'll ask you, I guess, first on your thoughts on the stoppage, and also what does this win mean for a guy like Ray Ford, who's now on the verge of becoming an American superstar in boxing?
Let me be very clear with you. And you know me. I am not the person to stop fights early. Everybody knows that shit. I'm a true believer, and we should get back to the Gotti Ward days, which we don't get anymore because they stop fights way too fucking early to allow a guy to have a comeback. But when you turn your back and you give yourself up, that is you saying I'm done, right? It's basically it's the fighter's version of throwing in the towel, right? If you turn your back and you give yourself up and you lean into the ropes, like it's no mas, bro. So even though I thought the fight could have gone on because he was on his feet, he gave himself up. Every boxer knows this. This isn't rocket science. This wasn't his first time around, the ring, so he should know better. And he was giving himself up, and he was taking some fucking hellified punishment at the time. So guess what? They stopped the fight, and rightfully so. Um, could have it kept going? Yeah, but don't give yourself up. For Ray Ford, bro, this is life changing shit. I mean, as it is, anytime you win a world title, you saw the way he reacted afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, he was one probably exhausted, but two, yeah, where he comes from, this means way more than a lot of these guys that do get that financial backing. They've got the superstar blue chip stuff. You know what I mean? When you get it out the mud, that's the reaction you get. This guy is it's going to change his life. It's going to change his family's life, and he's going to get bigger paydays out the mud. And he's already talking about moving up because the weight issues that he's had. He's going to get bigger opportunities, and my hats off to him. It was a hell of a fight. Like you said, it's one of those fights you could watch without the commentary, bro. It was great.
I mean, and it was a real back and forth fight too. It felt like Kolmatov won the first 3 or 4 rounds early. You know, he was boxing at a nice pace. He had Ray with his hands in his pocket a little bit. Ford picks it up in the middle rounds. Feels like Kolmatov maybe finds a little something at the back part of the fight, and then literally when he needs it to win the fight, because he wouldn't have won a decision, Ford gets the knockout with a couple seconds left. Like you said, turning the back, that's always the big one, right? You turn all the way, it means you're either done or you're not capable of being oriented and being aware of yourself. So you can't fight anymore. I can't be mad at the stoppage in that situation. And it was such a dramatic way for the fight to end. And he's had some hard fights on his come up too. He's had some nights where he didn't look the best, but like Troy, it's because he's been in with tougher guys than some of these other prospects. And then when you get to these big moments, you're ready for those moments because it hasn't all come easy to you. And I think him against any of these other champions, be it at 126 or 130, I think he's an exciting guy to put in the mix.
And another thing too, Dakota, is to your point, you didn't see him arguing the decision to stop it either, right? Like he wasn't arguing or fighting about it. He like, you know what I mean?
He was saying, go, "Hey, what the fuck? There's 5 seconds left."
Bro. He was like, "All right, yeah, thank you." You know what I mean? He
was out of it. He was out of it.
Yeah, bro. It's not like, Ryan Garcia's got this new thing where he basically turns his back in defense, right? But you can tell he's still in the fight. This guy put his hands down to his sides. He turned around and said, he's basically saying, "I give up," without saying, "I give up." So, I'm good with it. And again, you can always tell by the fighter's reaction to a stoppage if it was good or not, right? If the guy who's getting stopped looks relieved that somebody stopped it, it was probably a good stoppage, bro.
Oh, and add to the drama that we found out that Odebek had torn his ACL in the second round. So he fought the majority of this fight with an excruciating, horrible knee injury.
That's what I was going to get to.
And put on a hell of a show.
Sam commented on that. Yeah. And it's tough sometimes with the ACL, you're able to kind of deal with it in the moment a bit, but no matter what, you can't even if it was an easier one to deal with in the moment, he still had a damn torn ACL, so that dude deserves all the credit too. Reminded me of kind of like when Tank fought Gamboa, and Gamboa tore his Achilles too. And obviously, this one was a bit harder to see, but I give Odebek the credit for that to even fight through that. But even to go back to Raymond Ford, what makes him so special, what makes any fighter so special to me is the ability to adapt, just adaptability in the ring and in a fight. And that's why Terrence Crawford, to me, has been the best fighter in the world for years now, because he can come out in a certain style and then switch his style on a dime to figure out what he has to do to win the fight. And that's exactly what Raymond Ford showed he's been able to do. We know he can box. We know he's kind of been able to be a boxer puncher too at times, but we also saw he's able to come forward now. So I think that he's shown all those different facets to his game, and he's shown any given night he can be any versions of those fighters. And I think the experience that he's had on the way up, coming up, he had the draw against Aaron Perez. He had the fight against Edward Vasquez where some people thought he lost, which doesn't look as bad now because Vasquez was in a hell of a fight with Joe Cordina too. But I think since that Jesse Magdaleno fight, or even Zachariah Lucas before that, but the Magdaleno fight, it seemed like Ray Ford kind of put it all together and was starting to kind of sit down and feel more confident on his punches. And I think after this now, I think we're only going to see him explode. And he's already put it all together, but I think he's even going to do that and then some going forward too, because he's now comfortable fighting any possible way.
Yeah, I mean, sign me up, bro. Like anytime you got a guy who's willing to, like you said, bite down on his mouthpiece and say, "Fuck it," and go in there and get it, right? He wasn't waiting. He wasn't sitting up there trying to be cute. He went in there and he got that belt. He got it. And that's what you want to see. It's just like we were talking about, earlier with Zhang and Parker. I don't want to see you taking pictures. I don't want you thinking you got it, right? I want to see what Parker did. He went out there and got it. Even if he's losing, he's still fighting. Ray Ford went out there and he got it, bro. And then again, you take your hat off to a guy who fought almost a whole fight on one leg, essentially. I don't know about y'all. Look, I banged my knee on the corner of the table. I need 5 days rest, baby. It's a wrap. I'm down. And look, I need an ice pack, a popsicle, and some Netflix. Like, fuck out of here. You know what I mean? You tear an ACL, if people want to look at it this way, You tear your ACL in any other sport, you are done. You're not playing the rest of that game.
You
You're
might
not,
retire. You might retire.
right. This dude fought for 10 rounds. Come on, bro. Come on. So here's the caveat to that, right? There's probably another reason he wasn't disputing the stoppage. You know what I mean? He's probably in fucking excruciating pain. He's going to get another opportunity too.
I hope so. I think it was a gutsy enough performance that it deserved it, and ultimately Ray took it from him. He didn't give it up. I didn't think he turned his back because he was relenting. I think he turned his back because he was hurt and kind of unaware of where he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bottom line is it's a hell of a fight. I know March just started, but I said it to you, Dakota. I think I said it in our chat too. But me and Dakota do our weekly, a monthly awards, and if this ain't the fight of the month, then we know we got a hell of a fight coming up at some point too. Because
Something's
that's
got to be
exactly what
crazy.
the fight kind of reminded me of, like Oshaki Foster, Rocky Hernandez, where Ford and Shock were kind of losing the fight early on, but it was always competitive. But you always kind of seemed like they had that extra gear to go to. Little did we know they were both close fights, and they both needed the stoppages in the last round to win the fight too. So that's what boxing is all about. That's why those two guys are great champions. And champions, I know that fight has been talked about too. And if that fight's next, that's a fight I'm with too, with Ford moving up. But I do think the fight that's most realistic for Ford is if he's going to move up to 130 because he's with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. I think the Cordina fight is the one that's the most realistic. And hey, I ain't even mad at that fight either. You get Ford a chance to become a two-division world champion. If he wins that fight, then he can go on to unify too.
Yeah. What's the boy that just won a title that everybody's talking about? The shark food. He beat Garcia. Yeah. That's
Oh, Lamont Roach.
yeah.
I
I,
Is that
like
who
I
you're talking
LeBron
about?
Roach.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's a good fight too. I think Lamont
Give me
Roach is a good
Roach
fighter.
and Duke. Yeah, I watch that
hmm
shit all day.
hmm
Because no matter what you think of Lamont Roach, he did the same thing to Garcia. He's like he went out there and got it.
hmm
He wasn't trying,
Yeah.
again, he went out there and took it. Look, give me two guys that's willing to do that. Sign me up, bro. I don't give a fuck where they fighting. I'll watch it.
100%. That's all we ask for. And Ray Ford's off to bigger and better things. And Klomatov, I will assure you this to y'all, and we already know this anyways, but that dude will be back. That dude will be back in big fights. And if I'm not even gonna say if I was a betting man because I am a betting man responsibly, of course, but I would bet that Klomatov eventually gets a world title around his waist. I think he's too talented of a guy. He had a tough injury in this fight too, but he showed he's got the skill set to be a world class fighter and a world champion. So I think at some point, still a guy young in his career, he doesn't have a ton of fights, hasn't taken a ton of damage. He should be able to come back from this better than ever. And the experience now of also having that fight too will help him.
That's all you can ask of these boxers nowadays, right? Is how many times have we seen the blue chip guy give up in a fight because something isn't going his way? You're talking about a guy tears his ACL. You didn't see him complaining. You didn't see him, you know, demanding a rematch because of that. Hey, hats off. He beat me. You know what I mean? It's just like what Spence said. If I had an excuse, I wouldn't give it to you. He didn't make any excuses. He kept fighting. That's what we want from boxers, right? We want to see them say, no matter what, I'm in there, and I got to win this fight, no matter how it goes. It didn't go for the way he wanted it on that night, but I guarantee you, he runs it back probably with anybody else. He's in there giving them the business. Don't think that just because this guy got stopped against Ray Ford that you can get in there and do the same thing with him. He's probably not tearing his ACL twice. So let's go.
No, 1,000%. And I think that's about all we have. But Nibs, if we got any new viewers, any of our reoccurring viewers, they already know what's up. But anybody who's new, show me your shirt and tell them what the hell we always end these shows. I know you got the merch to show them too, so let them know a little bit about just obviously we covered the big fights, but what the most important part and the most important people to support in the sport of boxing. I know we all know local fighters and all those things, so it's your thing though. I've already talked too much. Hit it for us one time.
Look, man, we just got done talking about a guy who was local not too long ago, right? Ray Ford. You look at guys that we support on this channel. Oshaki Foster. We had his last opponent, Abraham Nova, on our card. These guys were local guys that weren't on national, platforms not too long ago. And now they're on these bigger platforms, but they're there. Why? Because people in their markets supported them. right? I don't care if you live in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't care if you live in Tucson, Arizona. I don't care if you live in Palo Alto, California. There's going to be a local guy from your town who thinks he can box or is boxing, is getting into it. He gets on a card, shows some support, or a woman for that matter. You know what I mean? Women's boxing. Look, we can all sit up here and say, wow, to how far women's boxing has come in the last 10 years. It was almost non existent. They were talking about getting rid of it altogether as a sports, in certain circles. So, through continued support, it is where it is now. Sometimes it just takes one, right? One person to put it on a platform because, hey, people kept showing up for this person. That's all you got to do, man. Support your local boxing because not again, and I say this all the time, it's not just about the boxers. It's about your local economy. There are a lot of people working those fights. Dakota knows this better than the rest of us, right? Incomes and rent and bills get paid, the more people show up for these local cards. And especially in nowadays with the way the economy is, we all need as much help as we can get. So get out there and support folks.
No, that's a fact. Couldn't have said it any better. That's why we always leave it to Nibs. But one last thing I want to mention, then I'll swing it to you guys to shout out anything you guys are working on. You guys have separate platforms. You guys do a great job with it too. But another local fighter who I think deserves some attention. He fought on a matchroom card once. My guy, Thomas the Kid O'Toole. He's an Irish fighter who's now fighting. He's got a homecoming fight in Galway, Ireland. Luke Keeler, former middleweight contender, is also on his card. So I just did a project with him. If you're already here, means you already found our channel. So just go through to our channels. I have a homecoming, just a little video to kind of get to know him a bit, because I promise you, I know he's going to be on the team combat team, I believe now for the Boston Butchers with Rashidi Ellis, Francis Hogan, a bunch of other guys too. So he's a guy who's going to be in big fights. As Nibs always says, these guys all come from a place. This is the place he's coming from. He's starting to build up his name. So that's someone to look out for. I'll pass it to you, Nibs, right after this. But Dakota, I know you got a slip and weave also, or any other local guys or anything that you want to shout out, any episodes you got coming up or anything like that. Floor is yours.
Just in general, I got new episodes of the Fight Life with Shadeja Green and Khalil Ko in the works. So we'll get those sooner than later. I'm also going to be kind of relaunching the Slip and Weave podcast in the coming weeks, to try to make it a more regular broadcast. When the show first came out, I was doing it solo every week, and then when I could get guests, I would have them. So I think I'm going to in the next couple of weeks start recording more solo episodes, and so I've been doing them like every other week with the guests. I'm going to try to get back to doing them every week. When I can get guests, I'll get them. So stay tuned for that.
Cool, cool. And obviously his Instagram is at the Slip and Weave Podcast. So y'all can go over there, Slip and Weave Podcast on YouTube. It is all there. And Nibs, you got your own thing going back up. Sounds about right. Let the people know a little bit about that. Any new episodes you got coming out, so on and so forth.
First off, I want to again, I give everybody their flowers because we have to, appreciate each other in this world. I want to thank Dakota and Jack. You guys' importance to the ITR platform is invaluable. So thank you, fellas, for rocking with me the way you guys have. Now that I've gotten that mushy shit out the way, look here, sounds about right. Podcast, baby. We talk about everything. We don't just talk about football, basketball, boxing. We do love our sports, but we'll talk about anything that's going on in the world. If there's some political shit, we might touch on it. If there's some shit going on in sports, if there's some shit just going on down your block, come on and fuck with us. We talk about it, and we'll usually tell you what we think, and it'll sound about right. The podcast is self-explanatory, motherfucking Tory. And if you're a new guest, you come on. And we play a questions game with you. Both of these dudes have both played it. It's funny shit. You should check them out on YouTube as well. And then if you're in the Tucson area, holla at your boy. Maybe I can come down there and come and check out your gym. We can get some some footage to put up on the ITR site for Catch and Counter and ITR all together.
Sir, that's a fact. And then Felix also mentioned support your local podcasters too and buy their merch. So he's working his ass off on the merch store right now. So we're looking to get that up later this month. But that is it for episode 21 of Catch and Counter. I'm gonna steal a line from my guy Nibs right now. So Catch and Counter, the authority of all things boxing, fuck with us or fuck off. So that's it for episode 21. Real talk to we appreciate all y'all in the chat. You guys help move the show and everything. Weedy, Jesus, everybody else who was in there before too. We'll catch y'all next.